The story kicks off with the death of a wealthy man named Aristide. At 85 years old, he supposedly met his end due to an eye drop solution being injected into his body instead of insulin. Some call it a tragic accident, but others suspect foul play. Aristide wasn't just rich. He had a knack for controlling everyone around him. Next, we're introduced to Charles, a skilled detective. Sophia, Aristide's granddaughter, visits him in his office. She's convinced her grandfather was murdered and believes the culprit is a family member. She's desperate for Charles to take the case. At first, Charles refuses. Why? He and Sophia have history. They were once romantically involved, but the relationship ended when Charles discovered Sophia's connection to Aristide. Back when Charles worked for the government, he was assigned to spy on Sophia, but he refused and quit his job instead. That revelation strained their relationship, leading to their breakup. Even after Sophia's plea, Charles isn't interested in the case, but his maid steps in, encouraging him to reconsider. She argues that solving this high-profile case would boost his reputation and bring in more clients. Reluctantly, Charles agrees. He starts by reaching out to a police friend to gather details about the case. Unfortunately, there's little to work with. The influential family has kept the police at bay, making it impossible to get a search warrant for the house. Charles decides to visit Aristide's sprawling mansion, where he meets Edith, Aristide's sister-in-law. After the death of her sister, Edith stepped in to care for the family's children. She and Aristide never got along, clashing due to their starkly different personalities. While exploring the household, Charles encounters Josephine, Sophia's precocious younger sister. Josephine is sharp and nosy, constantly eavesdropping and jotting down her observations in a diary. She even has a treehouse, which she uses as her personal lookout point, calling herself Sherlock Holmes. Charles then visits Aristide's office, where the old man's body was found. Sophia reveals that Aristide didn't care for most of the family, except for her. While in the office, Charles discovers insulin and eye drop bottles. He figures out that the eye drops were swapped into the insulin vial, leading to Aristide's fatal injection. The investigation kicks off with Charles interrogating the eccentric family members. First up is Magda, Sophia's dramatic and self-absorbed mother. A failed actress, she's married to Philip, a struggling playwright whose script Aristide refused to fund. Next, Charles meets Philip, who comes across as abrasive and bitter. A gambler by nature, Philip lost all his wealth in poker a few years ago. Charles also meets Clemency, the wife of Aristide's other son, Roger. Clemency is a plant expert and a respected professor. Roger, on the other hand, is an unsuccessful businessman prone to financial losses. Roger accuses Aristide's much younger second wife, Brenda, of being the murderer. He's convinced she's a gold digger who killed Aristide for his fortune. Brenda, a former dancer, denies the accusations, though suspicion looms since she administered the last insulin injection. Adding to the list of suspects, Charles meets Mr. Brown, the family's tutor. Brown mentions that on the night of Aristide's death, both Roger and Philip visited Aristide separately, each having heated arguments with him. Philip brought another script, which Aristide dismissed outright, while Roger, facing yet another financial failure, sought money from his father. Back at his place, Charles finds Sophia waiting for him. They go out together, sharing a moment of reconnection before Charles dives deeper into the case. He then meets Aristide's lawyer, who reveals that Aristide had signed a will in front of witnesses. However, the document now lacks a signature, leaving Aristide's wealth to Brenda by default. Charles confronts Roger at his office, accusing him of killing his father over money. Roger counters by producing a signed check for $2 million, given to him by Aristide the very night he died. Roger explains that his wife, Clemency, was fed up with life at the mansion and wanted to escape. She had no interest in Aristide's money, knowing it would tie them further to the toxic environment. While sharing this, Roger tears the check in half, suggesting he's done with the drama. This interaction leads Charles to suspect Clemency, who seemed desperate to break free from Aristide's grip. Returning to the mansion, Charles talks to Josephine again. She drops a bombshell. Brenda and Mr. Brown are having an affair. Charles relays this to Sophia, who reveals she already knew about the unsigned will. Sophia admits that she knows about the affair between Brenda and Mr. Brown. It turns out that Aristide, too, was aware of it, having hired Mr. Brown specifically to make Brenda happy. Just as Charles is about to leave, his car suddenly breaks down. Sophia, noticing this, kindly offers him a place to stay for the night. During dinner, a heated argument erupts, with everyone at the table accusing and taunting each other in front of Charles. After the meal, Charles retreats to the treehouse, where he spots Mr. Brown and Brenda in a conversation. When he finally descends, a pack of barking dogs greets him, making the situation even more bizarre. The next morning, Charles wakes up covered in cuts and scratches. Soon, a mechanic arrives and informs him that his car is fixed. Charles reveals that he had deliberately faked the breakdown because he wanted to stay and observe everything more closely. As the story progresses, another lawyer arrives at the mansion, claiming that Aristide had made a second will, which he had signed. This will, the lawyer explains, gives all of Aristide's property to Sophia. Charles is present when the lawyer shares this information. The news throws everyone into turmoil, and Charles soon receives an urgent phone call, prompting him to rush back to the mansion. There, he learns that the rope of the treehouse has been cut, causing Josephine to fall and suffer severe injury. Later, the lawyer returns to read the will aloud to everyone gathered. The announcement is met with a mixture of shock and frustration, especially from Clemency, who openly states that she doesn't care about the inheritance, as she had already planned to leave anyway. Both Clemency and Roger congratulate Sophia before heading out. Charles, however, begins to suspect that Sophia might also be involved in the mystery. She confesses that she knew about the second will, but thought Aristide had created it as some kind of joke, which is why she never mentioned it before. Feeling that Sophia might be hiding something, Charles grows more suspicious of her. His doubts lead him to Mr. Brown's room, where he discovers a cutter, one that could easily have been used to cut the rope in the treehouse. He also finds numerous letters from Mr. Brown to Brenda. This discovery points towards a possible connection between Brenda, Brown, and Aristide's death. Charles begins to think that Josephine might have known about this and could have been targeted by Brenda and Brown, who feared she might expose them. Despite all this evidence, Charles remains unconvinced. He believes that Brenda and Mr. Brown might have been framed by someone more cunning. Just when he's about to make sense of everything, he learns that the nanny has died after drinking the hot chocolate she had made for Josephine. Sophia, it turns out, had taken the drink to Josephine, but the girl refused to drink it. This leads Charles to once again suspect Sophia's involvement in the poisoning. Charles questions Josephine, hoping to uncover more clues, but the little girl remains tight-lipped. However, she mentions that her diary has gone missing ever since she returned from the hospital. Edith, who overhears the conversation, insists that Charles has already asked enough questions of Josephine and takes her out for ice cream. Not long after, a doctor arrives and confirms that the nanny died from cyanide poisoning. This revelation makes Charles recall that Edith is the only person in the house who has access to cyanide. His suspicion of Edith grows as he heads to her room, where he finds a vial of cyanide. While in her room, he stumbles upon Josephine's diary, which had been hidden away in the limestone. Charles rushes to his car and confronts Sophia, asking her about Josephine's whereabouts. Sophia tells him that Edith has taken her out. He takes Sophia with him, and together they search for Edith's car. As they drive, Charles hands Sophia the diary and asks her to read it aloud. The diary reveals shocking secrets about Josephine. She writes about how she's bored in the house and wishes something exciting would happen. She also mentions how Aristide once told her she wasn't pretty enough to become a belly dancer, which made her angry. She confesses that she replaced Aristide's insulin with eye drops, leading to his death. Furthermore, Josephine admits to putting cyanide in the hot chocolate, knowing the nanny would drink the leftovers. She also reveals that she was the one who forged the handwriting of Brenda and Mr. Brown to frame them. Josephine even confesses to cutting the rope of the treehouse to make herself appear as the victim. In a final twist, Josephine admits to planting a knife in Mr. Brown's room, further implicating him in the murder. Sophia, now fully aware of the truth, reads these revelations with growing horror. Meanwhile, Edith, having already read the diary, knows that Josephine is the mastermind behind the entire plot. Edith decides to take matters into her own hands, leaving Charles a note confessing that she is the murderer. In the note, Edith expresses her intention to kill herself and Josephine, as she cannot bear the thought of the little girl going to prison, but also cannot leave someone so dangerous alive. Before Charles can catch up with them, Edith's car swerves off the road and crashes into a ditch, killing both her and Josephine. The story ends with a sense of closure, as the mystery is finally solved, but at a tragic cost.